Under the blazing sun of 1876, in a dusty Missouri town where gossip traveled faster than the wind and judgment came quicker than mercy, Clara Mae McKenna was born different, and not in the way folks liked. By the time she was 14, she was already towering over most grown men, her frame long and strong as a fence post, her stride wide enough to cover ground twice as fast as the other girls. But in the eyes of her neighbors, she wasn't delicate enough to be called a lady and not demure enough to be called desirable, and so she was quietly discarded from the marriage pools before she'd even had a chance to swim in them, whispered about at church, laughed at in the market, and pitied by mothers who told their daughters, "Don't grow wild like her." But Clara wasn't one to wilt. Though each cutting word left a scar, she learned to hide behind a straight back and a chin held high, until the day her father died in a logging accident, leaving her with nothing but a debt-ridden homestead and a mother too sick to stand, and the same neighbors who mocked her now avoided her eyes as they passed her gate, unwilling to help, unwilling to care. So at 19, with her mother buried on a rainy spring morning and the bank preparing to seize the land, Clara saddled her roan mare, packed a single trunk with her father's old Winchester, a pair of boots, and the photograph of her parents on their wedding day, and rode west toward the territories, where the land was still wild enough that a person could carve a name from it without first asking permission. The trail was long, days bleeding into nights as coyotes howled in the distance and the sky stretched endlessly. But Clara rode with a fire in her chest, each mile carrying her further from the stifling judgment of her old life and closer to whatever future she could wrestle from fate's grip. When she reached Ash Hollow, a raw-boned town clinging stubbornly to the edge of civilization, its streets muddy from the spring rains, its saloon windows glowing like beacons in the dusk, she found work unloading freight at the general store, her heightened strength suddenly more asset than flaw, and though the men still stared, it was different now, not with mockery, but with a wary kind of respect. It was on a night like any other, when she was walking home from the store with her wages tucked into her boot, that she heard the sharp crack of gunfire from the stage depot and saw, without thinking, the black-masked bandit holding the driver at gunpoint, demanding the strong box. Something in her snapped. Maybe it was all the years of being told she wasn't enough, maybe it was the fact that this was now her town, and she wasn't about to let it fall to wolves. But Clara strode forward, voice like a rifle shot, telling the outlaw to drop his gun, and when he laughed, she didn't hesitate, swinging a length of timber down across his arm so hard the pistol clattered to the dirt. The driver never forgot the sight of her standing over the cursing bandit, shoulders squared, eyes cold as river stone, until the sheriff came running and clapped irons on him. From that night on, Clara's name began to carry weight, not as the too tall girl, but as the woman who'd stared down a man with a loaded gun and hadn't blinked. She started riding shotgun on the stagecoach runs, her sharp eyes catching trouble before it could catch them, her Winchester always close at hand, and she became the one people sent for when cattle rustlers circled too close or when drunken gamblers refused to leave the saloon without breaking something. Yet Clara never wore a badge, never sought a title. She simply lived by a quiet code. No one was beneath protection, and no one was above the law. Word spread fast across the territory, and before long, riders came from miles away just to see if the tales were true, if there really was a woman in Ash Hollow who could throw a man twice her size into the dirt without spilling her coffee. But Clara's story wasn't all victory. There were nights she rode out alone to bury someone who hadn't made it back, days when she stood between feuding ranchers knowing one stray bullet could end her life, and mornings when she stared into the cracked mirror above her wash basin and wondered if she'd traded one kind of loneliness for another. Still, the people loved her. The widows she'd helped keep their land, the shopkeepers she'd defended from thieves, the children who watched her ride past and whispered, "There goes Miss McKenna, the Queen of Ash Hollow." And though no crown ever touched her head, she ruled in her own way, through respect earned in sweat and blood, not granted by birthright, and in time, even those who had once doubted her came to see that the very things she'd been discarded for, her size, her strength, her refusal to shrink, was what made her a legend. Years later, when an Eastern newspaper sent a man west to write about the Lady Giant, Clara only agreed to speak if he promised to print her name in full, not as a curiosity, but as a reminder to every girl reading that she didn't need to make herself small to be worthy. The article called her the uncrowned Queen of the Wild West, and though she laughed when she read it, the truth of it was written in the eyes of everyone who knew her. So if you believe in stories about people who take what the world calls weakness and forge it into strength, if you believe the Wild West wasn't just built by cowboys but by women like Clara May McKenna, then saddle up with us. Hit that subscribe button, because there are more tales of grit, courage, and defiance coming your way, and you won't want to miss a single one.